Oh, that was loud. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It is Thursday, April 24th. This is the regular SIG Network SIG call. As usual, we are governed by the Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. So please don't be a jerk. That said, we have a mostly Antonio agenda today. So let's start with some triage and then we'll hand the floor over. So let me do a screen share. And how's that? All right. We have a relatively small number of new issues, so let's look at them. So DNS query timeouts on 131. I just started answering this one. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but DNS itself isn't really part of the core of Kubernetes. So I will answer this one with some help for debugging why their DNS service might not be working. So jumping on to the next one. We have a flaky test. I didn't look at this one yet. Services should update endpoints.
Then this is the one that.
Yeah, this is an old one that they closed the original and reopened it because it manifests slightly differently now, but it's the weird one where a node port connection is going to some completely random unknown thing.
Oh.
The man spent a lot of time on this and added a lot of debugging, and it's super. It's like the process moved from one network namespace to another, or something like that, and it seems to manifest only in this specific job.
Okay. So what's next?
Yes. I tried to put the man spent a lot of time, Dan a lot of time, me a lot of time. I tried to bring the node people, and I know Sam or Samuel Karp or other.
Sergey bowed out.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that this is we need to keep it open because the failure is legit, but really it's hard to explain what is going on.
Okay.
It's this kind of thing that you need to spend a lot of time there.
Okay. Who should I stick this with? It's currently assigned to someone, Arya, whom I do not know.
Yeah, I think that's a testing person or something. They submitted a PR, but it did not actually fix it. So
Is anybody going to spend time on this?
Tomorrow is vacation. Give it to me. I have tomorrow. I don't have work.
we can
I
definitely triage accept it anyway.
yeah.
Yeah,
This
that's your point.
is
Okay, moving on. Another flake in containerd Ubuntu.
I I don't know what's happened. I'm missing these notifications. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow is flaky day for me. Okay. Give it to me, and I will. So check proxy URLs.
Context deadline exceeded. All right. Jumping on. Extensible node readiness schedulability conditions. This is KEP now, right?
I went to Ajas or Aja. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. Went to SIG Node on Tuesday. I went there. It seems that there is other effort with node capabilities, and there is this working group, lifecycle working group, and there is this now that we are going to define readiness for network readiness is something, for security can be other thing, and I really don't know if they are going to progress or not. But for the networking perspective, I think that Dan also had a document that he shared some time ago with me, has the same a similar idea, and I think that it will be really important if we get something like this. Oh, he commented.
So there is I know there's a cap. Ajay pinged me with it, and I want to read it. I haven't had a chance yet.
But
There's
the
a lot of
conversation,
comments.
he filed an issue against Kubernetes enhancements, but I don't think there's like an actual KEP PR yet. And
Oh, he hasn't.
the discussion has mostly continued on this issue rather than moving to the KEP issue.
I see. Okay.
But there is the doc. The doc is kind of the pre-kept thing.
So
in the last comment. Okay, on
in
the
the last
description.
comment,
Yeah, or the one in the description, in
This
the
one.
previous. Yeah.
node rating. Okay, so there's a doc.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a pre-cap just to get the.
Yes, I mean that's
This
fine.
is right.
Everybody does that. So this is probably the place to start looking for details. I haven't thought about it, but it seems clear to me that something is needed here. So do we keep this issue? Do we close this issue and say move it to the pre-cap and cap? I'll ask this question on this issue. I'll take this one. All right, next. Introduce topology Kubernetes.io rack. Oh boy. So this is some good discussion. Anybody here? Okay. This looks like a good conversation that's going to end up in a KEP also. Doesn't look like a KEP has been produced yet though, right?
There was this cap from NVIDIA, and that was also discussed in SIG architecture, and the outcome of that discussion was that there was a strong assumption on a particular topology that is not necessarily easy to generalize. And this is kind of building on that cap. And honestly, I lost. I think that Dan was the last one in commenting.
Yeah, my last comment at the bottom is especially the last sentence. Like either you have a very workload specific topology, in which case we shouldn't standardize it. But if we do have standard topology, it's not clear how workloads would actually use it without understanding what it means. And so I was asking people for more information about how they're using this and what they would expect.
I agree. I think the zone and region, we all have a more or less defined understanding of what it means with respect to locality and topology and disaster recovery. I don't think rack is as clear, especially given that one of the motivations for standardizing on zone and region was that seems to be what everybody is standardized on, like Envoy gateway or Envoy proxy, everything else has that two-level understanding. If we add a new level of topology here, are we expected to have support for it in kubeproxy, for example? Are you going to add prefer same rack? Or prefer same, I'm guessing Coreful is your hypothetical other thing.
Yeah, but that was my argument against the generic topology, is that, you know, how are you supposed to know what these generic topology levels mean?
Right. Right. You need to define it in terms of within a rack, there's lower latency or lower cost or same failure modes or something. Okay. Should we just leave this one to keep going with discussion?
Yeah, hopefully someone will respond with more.
All right. Allow disabling health check node port. I remember this one, but I don't remember what we did with it.
No. There was one about disabling regular node ports, and now people want to disable health check node ports as well. And there's discussion ongoing here as well. So,
okay. Should I just leave the discussion going? 2 hours ago. Very fresh. Okay. We're at 15, so let's stop here. The remaining issues are crossed back into the past year territory. So if people have a moment, please feel free to look at them. They do need to be revisited at some point. I will stop my share. And who's next on the agenda? Is it Antonio or it's Dan first? You're mute. Dan, you're mute.
There was a someone commented in one of the KEP issues about how, oh, we can clean this up now that it's all implemented. We just need to change the KEP and to implement it. And so I did that, but figured we should revisit the idea of we're currently keeping KEP issues open until we have completed cleanup and removed the feature gate. And I'm wondering if we really actually need to do that, because that has tripped up other people who are making assumptions about what KEP issues mean. And we have the project board anyway that we can use to track cleanup. So
I don't know what the answer is from Contribex or release. My instinct would be that we want to leave them open as long as the gate is in the code. The KEP issue and the gate are sort of manifestations of the same idea. And when we get rid of the gate, we can get rid of the KEP issue. I don't feel strongly about that. We do have our own tracker, but that's what we do. That's not what every SIG does.
right, because the issue template, for instance, only extends to GA and there's nothing after that, right?
And that's true. So if you find a KEP issue and it says it's GA, should it be closed? Because there's not a checkbox for like gate removed.
To people who aren't us, it's not clear that this is something we're keeping around for a reason rather than something that we just forgot to close, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we should get everybody else to use our system.
You feel free to tilt at that. I haven't got the time this week. I mean, I think my opinion is that GitHub should be the source of truth. We should probably have another state that is like fully cleaned up or something that is post GA and issues. There should be a checkbox that isn't checked as long as the gate exists. And then when we delete the gate, we check the box, close the issue. You could argue that the issue being open is the checkbox, but that's ambiguous. So
we could just manually add another checkbox to our KEPs and hope other people notice that.
Who owns KEP at this point? Is it release or is it Contribex?
Release.
Maybe we should just ask them what they think and sorry?
I don't know. Arnaud is saying SIG architecture. I think that the process for triaging and all the things is more SIG release.
Well, like all the label mechanics and stuff is Contribex, right? So
now you're putting me in a doubt. I always think that this release team, at least the one that they are going through, before everything telling you you need to update this and you need to move this and other thing. I think these people is release.
They may not own it, but they implement it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is something I've come back to a few times, and I've been wondering who was going to do it. I'm going to go drop a note to SIG Release Slack and ask them if they would like to pretty please write up the state machine of how the KEP issue versus releases is supposed to go in their opinion so that we can agree on it. Because right now it's whatever each SIG thinks is useful, and that's not helpful to the project. I've been meaning to ask this question for a long time, so let me do that. I don't have an answer for you, Dan, but I have my own intuition, but honestly, if SIG release feels differently, I don't care that strongly. A consistent wrong answer is better than a mixed answer. Okay. That's it for you, Dan?
Yep.
Antonio has the next 2 slots.
Yes, the first one is for those of you that were not in QCon, in the contributor summit and across all the hallway conversations, were a lot of discussion about gateway adoption and how to make a better user experience. I also opened an issue some time ago in the project, and there were some good discussions. And when I talked with the people from Engage too to understand how far are they in the project, and well, when I was coming back in the airport, I was thinking we did something that was really good with the cloud provider kind, that was really simple and helped people to use load balancer, and we get a lot of good feedback, and it's a non-controversial implementation because it's clear that it's not going to compete or whatever thing, and has a lot of footprint on users. So I started to work on an implementation for Gateway API in cloud provider kind. It's much more complex than adding a load balancer for services. And I got stuck because I don't have the full knowledge of the API. But if you are interested in let's do in Blix. This is separate thing, Ricardo. I'm just saying I want to have this for lowering the barrier of people using Gateway and having something that they can use in their laptops. And if you want to help, the PR is there. There is still missing the part that converts from Gateway API objects to Envoy config. And if you have experience there, just reach me out and see if we can move this forward. That's what I have.
Is it the goal to be a reference implementation, or just like something to lower? I say that about Blix for real because I know that Shane and the others, they were working on Blix to to lower the adoption of gateway API as well, but for layer 3, layer 4, TCP, UDP. And I was doing something with Shane on using Blix and Pingora from Cloudflare. I just didn't have time to move on with that as well. So that's why I say like maybe having 2 or 3 different implementations would be, I don't know.
But this is the thing is, think is Blix and Ingate are implementations for people for running. Cloud provider kind is an emulation of a cloud provider, right? So you don't really get a load balancer, but you get the experience of a load balancer. It's not that you can run this into your cluster, right? So this is the difference. It's an emulation of a gateway API that you will have in GCE or in AWS on these kind of things. The only difference is that you emulate at the end is the same. You have an Envoy, right? But this is in your small environment with your kind cluster. I think that's the difference, Ricardo. This doesn't try to do an implementation of a gateway that you can run in your cluster. This tries to emulate the gateways that cloud providers have in their environments. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Follow now.
It's a really subtle distinction, Antonio.
But what I say is, I started with the load balancer when we did the rolling update. Then Dan started to fix all the load balancer tests. We ran with the load balancer tests. We found a lot of bugs. Then now I have a lot of feedback. People that this is awesome because I can run this as a staging environment for production. And
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad point. I'm saying like the distinction that you made, I don't think I understood until now.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's why I always get frustrated with this. Okay, thank you.
But I think the more relevant distinction is this is only designed to work within kind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, it's a reference implementation in that, it shows how the API can be implemented and lets us test it, but it's not a reference implementation in that most people aren't going to be able to use it in their real clusters.
Okay, I didn't know that, and I was always frustrated with that. Thank you for explaining this. The kind in production is great. So, well, that's the point. If you did some gateway to envoy translation, I really love your help.
Is there some future where we dedupe some of these projects? Because yes, I understand like it doesn't need to go into production, but in some ways, like the delta is both small and large. Small in that probably function-wise it is small, but large in the support, right?
No, this
Like
is
where's you understand what I'm saying?
no, the support is really. I mean, all these small projects that we have there are self-supported. You don't even have to. The key is to be strict on what you accept. Then is look kind. I don't know how many users, and it's Ben and I, and we barely spend 1 hour per week or something. We have now a new maintainer that also helps. But if you keep the surface small and very target, the maintenance is 1-2 hours per week, and
Well, one
sometimes
thing I'd warn, and like I'm very excited, like it'll be great to have kind support for Gateway. So thank you for taking this. I would warn that it's, Gateway is a big API. You're very aware of that, and there's a lot of features to support. There's a lot of complexity in how things connect, and so just my only concern, I just hope we don't spread ourselves too thin here. But I'm excited. Thank you for taking this on.
What I'm hearing is Rob volunteering to help maintain it.
Well, I mean, like I was talking to Antonio about this. It would be great if, like, as part of Gateway Conformance, it also has to work in kind. Like, kind has to work, right? And it's kind of the two projects kind of support each other.
this is so.
I mean, that has to happen unless it's just like we create a new feature in Gateway, and then Antonio has to spend like a week.
But so, for example, part of the admin network policy conformance is running the tests against a kind cluster running the Cube network policies project, right? Which was designed in part for this. So
the question is where the impetus lies. Is it Gateway project's responsibility to make sure that a new thing is supported in kind, or is it kind's responsibility to make sure that it conforms to a Gateway project, a Gateway release?
Yeah.
This is where you need that. This is the interesting question. So this only work if you adopt as a developer tool, right? Why kind works? Because if kind doesn't work, you cannot merge, right? And because kind now is the developer tool for Kubernetes. So if this works and the gateway people find it useful and say, oh, I have this my development tool for developing, then is when just naturally you move and you do your development in this thing, and you do your test for conformance in this thing, and then you promote the test. And this works if you have this adoption. If not, eventually they will go out of sync, and when the person that maintains the tool and stop maintaining, you have another project orphan.
We've had to walk a very delicate line in Gateway, or maybe half. Whether or not we've had to, we have. And the thing that we've committed to community is that we're not going to have a default reference implementation. We're not going to compete with other Gateway implementations from within Kubernetes. And I think it's clear that cloud provider kind is not trying to compete with, like Envoy Gateway or something, right? Like that's fine. What I am a little cautious of is if we take what feels like an obvious next step once this is live of running conformance tests by default as a pre-submit against cloud provider kind, for example, or like, is that that seems like it would require every developer of a feature in Gateway to add support in cloud provider kind. Instead, like it seems like it's shifting responsibility.
But that's the thing is, I don't merge anything until I pass conformance tests. So that's the first thing. This is not going to implement something that is not conformal. The second thing is, that's how you get feedback, right? Otherwise, what you find is people develop APIs, and then when you start implementing, you realize, oh, this thing is very complex. That's why I'm telling this a developer tool. I'm not trying to sell this to the Gateway project. I'm saying this is super useful for us with load balancer. It was super useful because we didn't have anything, and now we have a way for people testing services load balancer. And I think that this is a possibility. If there is no adoption, there will be no adoption. I don't worry. But if you want to use it, I can tell you that it's very useful for developing APIs, because you can also test your implementations at the moment that you are, before promoting.
Right. So to clarify, before we promote anything in Gateway, we require 3 or more conformant implementations. So it's not, we definitely test before we promote anything. This, I guess, could be one of those implementations. I think the risk is that it becomes a required implementation, and then it starts to become
that's the part that I don't understand from this community. You are so scared of having projects. These are open source projects, and it's a choice of the community. You can decide today to use it and decide tomorrow to not use it.
Sure. I guess what I'm saying is if Gateway ends up taking responsibility, Gateway as a project ends up taking responsibility in the sense that every time we get a new feature, we say, go add it in cloud provider kind before it can graduate. That is a shift, right? That's
but that's what I'm saying is you can decide this today and tomorrow you can decide not to do it, or you can decide I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm not trying to impose anything. I'm saying that
So let me interject here. The distinction that you made earlier that I hadn't really latched onto, I think, is important here. I don't think we're talking about kind as an implementation of Gateway API that a user could go shopping for. It doesn't compete with existing real implementations. It would not be part of any marketplace. And if you call us and say that you're running it in production, we're going to laugh at you. So in that regard, it doesn't violate the spirit of the sort of intention, I think, of not competing with the ecosystem, which I appreciate, right? I think it's important. But working code is worth 100 specifications. So having an implementation in kind seems like an opportunity for Gateway to say, here is the reference implementation. It might be wrong, but here's what we think the specification says, right? And it seems like an opportunity to say, if you're implementing a real, especially a commercial variant of Gateway, this is what you can look at for sort of a source of ideas. It seems like an opportunity to me. It is a shift, Rob, I think, and it would be, I'm sure, a real conversation with a capital C within the Gateway community of saying, yeah, thank you for the enhancement proposal. Can you also produce a patch against kind? But it's definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, I 100% think that's like a huge, very healthy thing to be like, hey, this API proposal, it has to be at least realistic enough to go into the kind thing, right? It's like, if it can't do that easily, then right, we need to discuss like why.
So on that note, I'm not against that, but it does get into some weird mechanics where we become dependent on reviews in cloud provider kind. Like you end up with this awkward dependency. I think it's good. We'll just need to work through mechanics and have, like you said, a big conversation around how it works. But to be clear, I'm excited. I think this, we use kind heavily already for gateway testing, so this feels like a pretty natural evolution of that. I just want to make sure, Antonio, you're not signing up for too much. If we send, a million, reviews your way, then that we're not overloading you.
Look, there is people always asking for how can I contribute to SIG Network, and that's why we have all these small projects, right? This is also something that one person. I mean, it's not in this project, but at saying kind, we now have a new maintainer. Ben just promoted one person. In the cloud IPAN team, we have this Anton Nemerov that is maintaining that. So if we make these things that are super focused and with clear scope, we are also opening room for new contributors to help, right? So this is a small project, and I don't think that there's many reviews, and I don't know. And I hear from people that is willing to spend time helping on this. I'm not worried about that.
How do we distinguish the charter? This is a bigger topic. We can follow up later, but something to think about maybe for the next meeting is how we distinguish the charter of this and Ingate, because it seems like some of the contributors that may be interested in this might also be interested in contributing to Ingate, so we may be spreading them thin.
But that's again, I think that the distinction Dan clarify is important. This is not implementing anything. This is emulating something with containers. So whatever you have only works in kind.
Right, sure.
The distinction there is real. I'm going to say it again. It's really subtle because you're going to ask people to write code that implements the gateway API in terms of some particular proxy implementation, right? Which means figuring out the Nginx or the Envoy configuration specifics for that particular feature, right? And the distinction between I did that logic for kind and I did that logic for ingate is almost zero, because like the code may be the exact same, right?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear. I get Rob's point. Like the distinction, you're basically asking them to build ingate into kind, which I don't honestly think is that big a deal, especially when we're saying this is not, you can't extract this and use it somewhere else. We're perfectly happy to take shortcuts because it's built in as part of the gateway API or part of the kind system.
Okay, now I understand. Look, but this is open source, right? I don't think that we need we need to offer choices, right? I hate that we need to declare winners. If people want to do Ingate and want to do English engineers and cloud provider kind.
So I don't think anybody's declaring a winner here. But I'll say it again. I'm put a time box on this because we're at 20 minutes left of the meeting. And Antonio, you're basically stealing from yourself now. I think it's personally, I think it's a good idea. I think from the Gateway project point of view, it should be pitched as an opportunity to make sure you have a beachhead of this is what the implementation is expected to do. Does that mean every single person who's implementing or who's writing a GEP has to go and learn Nginx? I don't know, maybe a little bit, but
I'm
honestly,
not using Nginx.
Or whatever you're using.
Okay.
Right.
No, I didn't.
Whichever thing we're choosing, we're making a choice, right? And so you're going to ask people to go and do that. I think its reality is they'll come to Antonio and Ben and others and say, hey, we have this gateway proposal and we need to implement it for kind and we don't know, or can you help, or maybe we can work together on figuring out how to implement this. that seems plausible to me. And I would say, let's give that a shot and see if it falls over in the way that I think Rob's afraid of it falling over. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Rob, but that's what I'm reading. And then revisit it. It seems like a directional shift for our SIG overall to say we need to have a reference implementation. But I think the reality is without it, we have so many blind spots. Anybody want to have the last word before I push to the next topic? Okay. Next on the agenda is, oh, sorry, Bowie.
No, I just thought of one thing that is like a huge distinction, right? We would never optimize the kind implementation for performance or anything, right? Like, just to make that
Yes.
clear, so you can just reject any kind of contributions to that.
The goal is to be the simplest possible, most obvious implementation ever.
Yeah.
Okay, next topic. I think that
next is Antonio again.
Yeah. So testing. Long time ago, I don't know how I found this BATS framework. I don't know if any of you heard about that. Back in, I don't know, 2019 or something, this was one-person project, and it was really cool. You just define your test, and it gives you a framework that has also an output that is called TAP or something that it seems to be some kind of a standard. So I used that back in the days, and it was really useful because if you develop command line tools or things that you test with bash scripts, this allows you to add automation based on that. And we have these Q network policies for DNS thing, and I was talking with Surya and Dan and say, oh, we need to do the conformance test, so we cannot test it. And then, oh, I want to test the implementation. So what I saw is that they have really good documentation on the network policy API, and they have scripts. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to test with these scripts if they do what at least the documentation say. And I remember when I was doing the RANSI thing with the interfaces the other day, they have this framework. So I added it, and I was surprised that it was so simple to add with GitHub Actions that I didn't have back in the day. And if you have any project in GitHub or whatever thing, I really recommend this to you because it allows you to get regression tests very simple and automated. Well, I linked a lot of things in the agenda because you have examples of how easy it is to set up the framework and the GitHub Actions and to add a test. And that's it.
Do you want to show some? You got a bunch of links in the agenda here. Do you want to like show one of these examples or?
I have a question while you're pulling it up, Antonio. Like, how does this hook into the GitHub? No, I'm sorry, the Ginkgo tests, like, or the conform. Like, how do the two mesh together?
So,
or is it just for like your repo? Just do everything in this framework.
It just say one thing is I always ask for it test and all these kind of things because that's the way I have to ensure that things doesn't regress and the people that use the thing that you're developing get what they want, right? And Ginkgo, I really don't like Ginkgo, and we have good relation. It's super heavy weight, as you need to do all the Golang things. And let me share the screen so you can see what I mean. Oh, I cannot share. So.
Oh, let me make you a co-owner. Hold on a second.
No, it's, any of you can open this one, the one with Nazi 4.
You are co-host. You can share now.
So there are different things for different tools for different reasons. If you have a small project, Chrome tab. if you have a small project that like this and you just need to get things going and it's a command line thing, and basically what you do for testing or developing is doing bash scripts. Am I sharing now? You just
Yes.
you just add this. This is from the Nazis 4 project, and this is a teammate that is adding something to implement ICMP. And I thought I want a test, and he was saying, "Oh, if I need to add a test with the E2E, I need to." It's super complex for somebody that is not used it, and you don't have the framework already in the repo, and then you need to set up the infra and you need to build. And he just need to add a test that I don't want this to regress, and I want to run a pod to do a pin and see that it works and check. This is the pull request. Is with 50 lines, I get the regression test
So
that I
d-
can read, and it guarantees that the user is going to use it this way. So,
so
yeah.
and so this it feels like a ginkgo for bash. So maybe we should call it bimpo. But
You're naming things.
like, does it include all the things that make ginkgo horrible but also useful? Things like before this test do X, after this
Yeah,
test do
yeah. It
Y.
has it has all that stuff.
Right. Like I feel like I've written this sort of thing myself with you've probably never looked at the git sync code, but like I have a fairly shocking to you, I'm sure. I have a fairly rich E2E framework that I've written in Bash for those tests, right? Which lets me run e2e.sh dash question mark, and it'll show me the list of all the test cases I can run, and I can choose some by regular expression, and it has setup hooks and tear down hooks. It's not very general purpose, but it seems to solve the same problem. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, it's exactly the same thing. When so to be clear, if you don't have a project like the conformance that you run in network policies or in Gateway, I would not use this, right? But if you have a project that is 1-2 persons and you want to get some coverage, you don't want to spend your time in creating the framework, getting it up to date, dealing with the libraries, doing helpers and all the things. This gets you going quickly and gives you coverage. Because the most important thing of this project is to not regress. And if you don't have tests, you're going to regress.
Yeah, it looks very simple. The file you have e2e.bat in the kube network policies repo itself. And I see that you have added some domain names for your tests. Maybe I can try to leverage some of that and write proper conformance in network policy if I don't block you.
RunC have then the RunC project from
Yeah. We use that in GoVMomi as well. I think for us it's more like as an example on Ingress in Nginx, we have that huge test framework that we need to keep changing all of the things in Go and whatever. When I just want to do a kubectl apply on an Ingress object and then do a curl and say like, hey, okay, this works or not, right? So that's
yeah,
I
maintainers
do have a question though, like why not just wrap that once in a Go library and make it good? Because like what's it like the node startup script that's like all in Bash. Bash is like it's like great, but then it when it grows, it just becomes very scary.
Bowie, if you want to cement that opinion, go read the link that I just posted, the git sync E2E test. Like I have to do weird, unnatural things with file descriptors so that I can capture the output from running Git manually, but that's different than the output of the test case itself. Like it's atrocious. So Antonio, thank you for bringing this up. I'm gonna not this week, but eventually go look at this and see if I could adopt it instead of my bespoke thing. Like anything that other people are using is bound to be more useful than something I've cooked up myself.
this is especially when you have projects like Ricardo knows the pain, right? Like this, that you cannot spend a lot of time, but you want to have something that at least ensures that you don't regress, and you have a lot of community excited people to contribute something. If you ask them, oh, you need to go through this framework and do an E2E test, they are not going to do it. And then you have this to balance this. Oh, do I allow to merge or not? And then usually fail, open and merge and then regress. With this, they can do the test very easily. It's a simple thing. I think that Rob has something and I'm hijacking the conversation. Okay, I'm done with this bash thing.
All right, Rob has the last slot on the agenda.
Oh, mine is actually really quick. So two things. Yesterday, Gateway 1.3 got released. I linked to the changelog there. So thanks to everyone who helped get that across the line. And then the second thing is we've opened up scoping for 1.4. So this is basically 3 weeks to suggest proposals that you want to see in the next version of Gateway, and also vote or show your support for the features that you care about, because we have a limited amount of features that we can fit into any given release. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay. Anybody else have last topics they want to throw in the last 7 or so minutes? Okay. It was wonderful to see everybody at KubeCon, and I hope everybody's getting their proposals ready for KubeCon North America. There will be a KubeCon Japan in 7-ish weeks. So anybody who's going to be in Japan, look for me. I'm going to try to be there. And maybe we'll have a get together there, but we can plan that a little bit later. It's a much smaller event, so we're not going to do a SIG update or anything. Is anybody here presenting in Japan? Network topics? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Well, I will try to represent.
Lionel is going. Lionel is here.
I don't see him on the list here. No.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, maybe I don't want to speak from him, but I think that he told me that he was going.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's going.
Great.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I hope there'll be a few of us there and we can get together. It seems like it'll be a much smaller event, which will be nice. All right, cool. That's the end. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.
See you.